In this night and in this hour, I call upon the ancient power. Bring back my sister. Bring back the power of three.
What's going on, y'all? Listen, I hope genuinely that you are prepared, okay? Because we're here to talk about Charmed again, and we're going to talk about parts 1 and 2. Now, I don't want this to be super long where we go super in depth, beat by beat, because sort of in the past, what we've been able to do with episodes is, go through the episode, go through what happens, and then we talk about, my feelings, things like that. But I feel like because this one is such a heavy one and because it's a two-parter, I don't necessarily want to go beat for beat. I just want to have a discussion about it. Now, the time that this is coming out, I think about 2 weeks ago at this point, something like that, the House of Hallowell podcast actually did their coverage of, well, it actually may have been more than that. I think it was more than that because I think last week they did Hell Hath No Fury. So it would have been before that. The point here is that recently they shared their thoughts on it. Holly did not partake in the episode, which I don't blame her because girl, this one is heavy. So, if you want to hear their actual take on it and what it was like for Brian to be a part of it, please feel free to head on over there. Go listen, go tune in. This is very much like a fan perspective. And, I just wanted to go ahead and give you that. So this episode was actually chosen by our patrons over on Patreon. This is the third episode that we've done. So far, we've talked about Something Wicca This Way Comes. We talked about Morality Bites. We're here to talk about Charmed again. And I want to say that our next episode is going to be Power Outage. And then from there, our patrons are going to have the option to choose the episodes that we talk about. So if you'd like to be a part of that, please head on over to patreon.com/powerofg so that you can help me to pick the episodes that we discuss in this podcast. All right. So today we're here to talk about the big boy, the behemoth, okay, of Charmed. And the reason that I call it the behemoth of Charmed is because this is a huge, huge shift in the story of Charmed, in the lives of the characters. I mean, there's so much. Now, I really want to preface this by saying this is not a place where I'm going to be talking about the behind the scenes drama or issues. This is not something where we're here to discuss and dissect what they had going on in their personal lives or even their professional lives as they pertain to each other. This is something strictly where I am going to be talking about the experiences of the character, how I felt as a fan, and hopefully open it up to you to talk about how you felt about it. So Charmed Again is the season 4 opener, and it's actually our very first two-parter of the series. And it, honest to God, starts a whole new era of the show. So at the end of season 3, Prue and Piper went up against Shax, trying to save an innocent, trying to save Dr. Griffiths. Unfortunately, though, they were not able to stop him, and Shax took our sweet, precious angel baby Prue's life. And he also took the doctor's life, which is going to be not super important. I say it's going to be really important, but it's honestly not. It's going to be important for like 30 minutes and then we don't deal with it anymore, but we'll get there. But one scene that I do want to talk about specifically as we get into this discussion is the opening scene. What we see is Piper in the attic, and she is using the Book of Shadows to try to bring Prue back in any way that she possibly can. Mama is cutting that finger, and she is dripping blood, trying to bring Prue back. She is trying to call blood to blood. And what I found so interesting about that was that particular moment with the cutting of the finger was thinking back to like season 1, and Piper was like, I'm not cutting my finger. I'm not doing anything with some blood. That's not happening. I'm not gonna cut myself. And then you get to this and Piper is just numb. Piper is like Piper didn't even want to poke her finger in season 1. And at the beginning of this season, she's just like slicing. She's like, whatever. I just need to. And it's such a weird progression to see because you can tell that she's just desperate. And I think it goes to show how much she's grown as a character, but then also the kind of pain that she's in. Now, Phoebe comes in and It's right after Piper cast the spell, and Piper thought that it was Prue. Piper thought that she had succeeded in bringing Prue back. And the look of disappointment on her face when she realized that it was Phoebe, I it breaks my heart because like the way she just sort of like collapses is so sad because you can tell this was the last shot. This was something that she thought this is going to work. And to see her reaction to it not working is honestly heartbreaking. So Phoebe is part of this scene. She's basically trying to tell Piper, like, girl, we tried everything we could and we can't bring her back. Like, there's no magic that we can use that can bring her back. Which is interesting because it's like, y'all got genies available to you and all kinds of other things. But at the same time, it's like, I think the point of this, though, and, God bless them, the writers were not exactly deep into, trying to flesh things out. But to me, what I always took from them trying to bring Prue back and not being able to and using magic to do so, is this particular time, it wasn't meant to work. Like before, they always kind of cheated death, using different magic that was available to them, whatever the case may be, reversing time, using a genie, things like that. Leo being able to come in and heal them at the very last second. But I think the point of this, though, is that finality. It's the point that Prue is not meant to be brought back because this was actually her time. And it gives me chills to think about. But Phoebe is trying to comfort Piper and just tell her, like, girl, we tried everything we could. Like, you have to kind of get it together because we got this funeral later on. We Prue is gonna kill us if we show up looking bad, whatever else. And she's kind of trying to like joke with her, comfort her, whatever else. And I'll be very honest with Phoebe this episode because I think that I used to be one of those people that thought that Phoebe was so strange because I thought like Phoebe is not really grieving. Phoebe is just sort of there. Phoebe is kind of whatever. But as I've rewatched the series, I really have a deeper understanding of this character. And everything that Phoebe is doing is completely normal for her. Like Piper is the emotional one. She's grieving. She is hurt. She doesn't know what to do without Prue. What is next? What's the next step? And the thing is that Phoebe is feeling all of that herself, but she's doing what she always does. She's running from emotion. She is running from how she actually feels and throwing herself into other things because that's what Phoebe does. And we see that throughout the series. We constantly see Phoebe throw herself into something, whether it be just in an episode, whether it be overall, because she doesn't want to feel what she's feeling and face things. And I think that's why we see such a dismissive tone from Phoebe when she's in the attic talking to Piper. I don't think that she means to be dismissive, but I think that Phoebe doesn't have a place for it. She doesn't have the skill set or the tools to really handle what's going on herself and to try to talk Piper through it in this moment, because Phoebe usually can kind of like put her own whatever to the side and she can be comforting and she can give you some sort of guidance on what to feel or what to think. But in this particular instance, Phoebe's got nothing. She is spent emotionally. She's literally just trying to survive moment to moment. And that's what I think is easy to misinterpret from her character. And I really wanted to take that moment and just talk on her because I think it's so easy to think that she is just being a brat almost, or that she doesn't care and she's disconnected, when in reality, I think she genuinely is just so hurt. This is such a huge loss. Look at what happened after Grams died. She literally packed up and moved across the country. Like, she convinced herself that she didn't belong there with their family, and she packed up and left. So it makes a lot of sense. And I think the fact that she stays and the fact that she's trying to comfort Piper, the fact that she's trying to be there for her and just be a sister, I think shows the emotional growth that Phoebe has, but that she also is the same Phoebe. She's also just going to be a little disconnected in the moment because she is doing what she always does and she's trying to disassociate so that she can handle things. So, a fun fact about this is that Charmed Again was actually my very first episode of Charmed. It was my introduction to the series. Prue's funeral was the very first scene that I ever saw. And it set a tone that I think took a long time for me to kind of recontextualize, but then it also gave me, I think, a greater appreciation for our character that was introduced this episode, Paige Matthews. And so, with that, I think it's time to kind of go into the meat and potatoes of this episode as it pertains to Paige. So, Paige is one of the focal points of Charmed Again. Now, Prue's funeral, death, the fallout of that is, the other focal point, but Paige's introduction is the co-focal point. Take a sip of something every single time I say focal point because my God. But anyway, as Piper and Phoebe are trying to grieve the loss of Prue and even figure out what all of this means for them as people, as sisters, as a family, as the charmed ones, they're trying to really put into perspective how to handle this going forward. We are introduced to Paige Matthews. Now, Paige is an interesting character in this episode because my baby does not know what the hell is going on. Paige has no idea what's happening. Paige is just kind of like a bystander, just for all intents and purposes. Now, what we do find out about Paige, Piper's spell where she tried to bring back Prue actually did not work for Prue, but it did summon Paige. Now, when I say that it summoned Paige, what I mean is that she called out to her sister on like a spirit wind. I just love spirit wind. I don't know why, but when the oracle said, and we're gonna get to the source in the oracle, but when the oracle says, I hear a cry I hear a witch's call on spirit winds, that is just so dramatic to me, and I just love it. I just live for it. But anyway, Piper summoned Paige. So a newspaper drops out of the sky, right, when Paige is at work, and she just feels it almost looks like she goes into a trance a little bit. Like she's just hyper focused on the paper and she just starts walking out. And her boss is like, "Girl, where are you going?" So that's kind of gonna become a pattern with Paige. Paige will leave that job. I will give my baby that. That lady does not put that job before her family or before anything else. Paige will just leave. But anyway, Paige goes to Prue's funeral, and after the funeral, Phoebe is shaking her hand, and she feels like she recognizes her and knows her from somewhere, but she can't really place where. And I just thought that was a sweet little moment. It's the classic, "Don't I know you from somewhere?" And she shakes Paige's hand, and she gets a premonition of Shax attacking Paige, right? And so Paige, I feel like reasonably is freaked the hell out and she just leaves. I don't know why it was so funny to me that Paige's first reaction was to be like, I don't know what kind of freaky deaky stuff y'all got going on over here, but I'm finna go. She didn't ask her, like, "Are you okay?" Paige just, and I know this is not supposed to be like a lighthearted thing, but I just find humor in stuff like that because Paige really is a real one. And just to kind of have a discussion about that real quick, there was someone in the community at one point who made a very good point that Paige really does inject realism into this story. Where we've become so accustomed to the demons and the fighting and figuring out plans and things like that, and everything just seems so normalized to us. Paige really does come in and she's like, "I don't know what y'all got going on. Like, what is this?" So I can honestly say that if I shook somebody's hand and they passed out, I too would probably be like, "This ain't got nothing to do with me." I too would be like, "No, I think y'all can have this because I'm not doing it." But anyway, we get a little information on Paige a little later on that she's been going to P3 for about a year now because she was doing some research. We also find out that Paige is adopted. And in her research, she thought that possibly the Hallowell's mama was her mama, but she died a long time ago. And somehow Paige thought about, this can't be it because she's dead. Listen, let me say this. Let me stop for a second and say this. I think that although there are a lot of holes and although things are really flimsy Okay. I do think that this episode handles this well enough. Am I saying it's the best that it could be? No, but I do think that it handles it well enough as far as Paige's introduction, how she came to be, her connection. I think, maybe we could have left out that she's been coming to P3 for a year. We probably could have left that out. But I can appreciate the fact that they're trying to give us some sort of details on who she is on her journey. And now I'm gonna just say this. I would like to know how Paige found out that Patty could have been her mama. I would love to know that, but I'm just gonna drop it because I'll never get an answer to it. So there's no point in me being preoccupied by it. So Paige and her date. Oh, before I forget, Paige was drawing a triquetra on a napkin, so that means she's a charmed one. Paige is drawing a triquetra on a napkin because that's something that people normally naturally do. But it actually makes sense for Paige because we do find out later on that Paige is essentially an artist, that she's very artistic. She likes to draw, she likes to paint. So it actually does make sense. I'm being funny, but it's just funny that she's just sitting there drawing the triquetra. Anyway, Paige and her boyfriend slash date, I think he was just a date. I don't know. That doesn't really matter. But her and this man go up to the top of a building where she just wants to be free. I think she was going to get a little freaky with that man. And listen, girl, have at it. I mean, it was some beautiful scenery, so I probably would have done the same thing. But anyway, Phoebe and Cole go to save her, right? They're there to try to stake things out. They see they're at the building where this is going to happen. But as Shax attacks, Paige orbs out. And everyone is shocked. Paige doesn't know what the hell just happened. Phoebe doesn't know what just happened. Cole is just kind of there. He's just like, oh, wow, this is interesting. And yeah, our baby orbs. And then she runs off. Even Shax is like, Now, we did have an opportunity to talk to Michael Bailey Smith over at the Power of G, just to get his thoughts on playing Shax and Balthazar and playing a Grimlock and all of his prolific career that he has had. So if you want to go check that out, please feel free to do so. I'm going to link it somewhere at the bottom. But I just wanted to bring that up, that we've talked to Michael Bailey Smith. So Phoebe and Cole go to save Paige. Phoebe says the spell, and then that gives Paige a chance to run away. Later on, we find out from Patty and Grams, okay, that Patty had a baby with Sam, and it was after her and Victor had broken up. Now, I put emphasis on that because, y'all know how that timeline is. Y'all know at one point they pretty much told us that them folks had an affair, and now it's like, no, it was after. Anyway, this is a serious scene. So Patty is basically saying that her and Sam had this baby, but Grams, for the most part, made them give it up. Grams is saying that, she knew that there were going to be terrible repercussions, that the sisters were not going to get their powers, which I still don't understand how she thought that was going to happen. But anyway, but they made the choice to give the baby up. They took her to a local church and they said, hey, find her a good family. Now, this scene moves kind of fast. And the reason I say that it moves kind of fast is because they're trying to give us a lot of background information on this character. And you have Piper and Phoebe not having time to digest anything. Nothing. Like, they're just being given this life-shattering, life-altering information. And it's just like, can my girls have a moment to breathe? My God. And now, at the same time that all of this has been happening, there is an inspector. We have another inspector he basically busts the sisters. He is the one that has been in charge. I forgot to bring that back up. Dr. Griffith's death and Prue's death are being investigated, right? And it's such, like, it only pertains to this episode. We never hear about it again. It never gets brought back up. We just move on from it. But he is hard after trying to figure out what's going on, baby. He is trying to figure it out. After Paige and Shane get attacked, he goes to the hospital and he basically is like, I know you know something. And first off, he tells Paige that she looks like Prue. And I was so sad by that because That's probably the first time in Paige's life that she's ever heard that she looks like somebody. And look at the scenario. Look at what is surrounding it. It's literally her almost dying, her boyfriend friend almost dying. It's around a dead woman. Like, if I was Paige, girl, my nerves will be bad. But anyway, after Patty and Grams tell them, about Paige, he busts in. He just busts in. He sees them with ghosts. And he's like, I knew it. I knew something was going on. I didn't know it was this. I'm going to put y'all under surveillance. And then Daryl hits this man over the head. Hits the man over the head and knocks him clean out. And then Grams comes up with the idea to quote unquote dump him somewhere. And Phoebe sends a man to Timbuktu. And I just can't. I just can't. I just want to take a quick moment to acknowledge the fact that I said we're not going beat by beat. And I'm literally sitting here going, listen, I'm not trying to laugh. Y'all, please let me know how you feel about this, because I just feel like once you start talking about this episode, and really Charmed in general, I feel like once you start talking about it, it is so easy to just talk about the whole episode and just talk about the scenes, because especially for Charmed again, everything is so important. Like, it's hard to kind of sift through what can be left out and what shouldn't. So it's like, I know that I said that I was not going to go beat by beat. And I'm literally like, so in this scene, but also, I mean, this episode is so heavy. You know what I mean? Like, this episode has so much going on and is so whatever. That's why I think I'm trying to make little jokes or make it as lighthearted as possible, because it's really, really heavy. And for it to be a 2-part opener, baby, listen, my girls were going through. Anyway, after the inspector is dumped somewhere to Timbuktu, Cole goes off to get him, and as everyone walks downstairs to try to go find Paige, Paige walks through the door. Paige said the door was open, and so I just came in because I don't know what's going on today. So if I need to walk in your house, I'm just gonna walk in your house. I don't know what else to tell you. And you know what? I'm right there with you, girl. We don't have time. We don't have time for pleasantries. We don't have time to be polite. I'm just gonna walk in your house. Somebody finna answer my questions. But anyway, the big moment happens and our girls touch hands, and then the power of 3 is reconstituted. The lights come down from the chandelier. And it's so funny because Patty tells them that all 3 of them need to be together by the book to activate the power of 3, just like before. And I was like, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. You weren't even there. So what are you talking about? Anyway. So Shax attacks and he throws our girls. Like, baby, he throws them to the other side of the room. I said, he is trying to get him another Charmed one, the way he came in there hitting. But our girls run up to the attic and Piper and Phoebe are telling Paige, we need you to say this spell with us. Paige is like, what are you talking about? Are y'all crazy? She didn't say, are y'all crazy? She was like, what are you, witches? And they're just like, yeah, and so are you, we hope. Phoebe, we do not have time for you to hope. This is not the time to hope, mama. It's just not. Like, this is the time where we need to be very clear on things, and we need to specifically know that she is a witch, a sister witch. We don't have time for maybes, but thank God Paige actually is their sister, and they are able to vanquish Shax. Now, immediately though, it's like Shax was only the small fry. We need to go after the source. Why would you say that in that moment? Because of course Paige runs out. I would too. What do you mean, the source of all evil? I just watched a man blow up in front of, well, not a man, but I just watched who looks like a man, a blue man, blow up in front of me. I literally need you. I literally need you to clock in, and I need you to tell me what is going on. But Paige is like, you know what? Don't worry about telling me what's going on, because I'm finna leave. And I would have done the same thing. Listen, okay. Part 2. Part 2 is a little, it's different. Like, Charmed Again Part 2 feels like an episode to me. Like, Part one definitely felt like the opener to something. It definitely felt like the first part of this epic tale that we were going to get as the introduction to the season, introduction to the character. Part two feels like a regular episode. And I'm not quite sure why. I'm not sure what the difference is because I feel like we still have a lot going on, but it just there's just something about it that feels so disconnected from the first part. And I don't know. Maybe it's because it didn't need to be a second part to this episode, but then at the same time I feel like I understand why it is. But for part two, we're really just going to kind of focus on the major plot points because I think that'll be the better way to go. So, in part two, we are dealing with the fallout of part one, finding out that we have a sister. We're starting to get a little bit more on Paige. Paige goes to the church where she was born, and or not born, but where she was dropped off, and she gets this blanket and it has a P on it. And I was like, not Patty dictating what her daughter's name is gonna be after she leaves out of church. Girl, I would have named that girl Susie and called her today. But that's just me. That's just me being petty because you're not gonna tell me what to name this child. You see, her parents didn't even take the blanket. Her parents were just like, girl, anyway, keep that. If she comes looking for it, she can come looking for it. Now, did they say that? No, but it's just funny to me because I feel like the nun was just like, I'm going to put this back. Anyway, though, this is where we find out how Paige's power works. So, of course, she was going to have telekinesis because she's the third sister in the prophecy. But we find out that Paige's white lighter side affects the way that her power is. Ooh, and she can telekinetically orb. So she orbs a candle to her. And already I'm obsessed because this new power, this new way of doing things, it just feels fresh and new. And then, of course, by the end of season 4, everybody's telekinetically orb. I would say by the end of the series, not the end of season 4. Although we do see like an angel, whatever, we do see her telekinetically orb. But somebody brought up a really, really good idea one time that maybe she was a white lighter witch. And anyway, sort of in the background of this episode, what we have happening is the source, right? The source is not happy that there is another charmed one. He is livid that he got rid of one just for another one to pop up. And I know that man was thinking, what are they, rabbits or something? Like, my God, another one done popped up and I just got that one out of there and I've been trying for 3 years. But anyway, the source is doing whatever he can. I'm talking about whatever he can. He has possessed Paige's boyfriend. He is trying to like manipulate her from the scenes. What he is trying to do is turn her evil. He's like, you know what? Instead of killing her, I'm going to turn her evil and I'm going to use her powers for evil. Because we find out in this episode that there is a 48-hour window, apparently. And after you become a witch, you can choose good or evil within that 48 hours. Now, I feel like that's a little bit of a flawed system because what if someone finds out that they're a witch and they have no idea what all of that means? I feel like they're just naturally not gonna do anything evil unless they're just a bad person. Because at that point, it's like, but then Paige was under a spell by the source. So would she have actually chosen evil if she had killed somebody? Because that seems very like coercion to me. But anyway. Now again, okay, Paige is going through. The source in her boyfriend's body done killed her bird. The source is trying to get her to kill somebody. He literally makes her almost kill this man that is under investigation for harming his son. And we find out that like the man wasn't actually hurting the child. It was actually his mama. But anyway, that's significant to me because even though it's like an evil deed, I feel like it goes to show how deeply Paige cares and how deeply Paige wants to help other people. Because Paige is a social worker, and I feel like that goes into what a heart she has for people and her own experiences. And the fact that that was the thing that the source tried to use to corrupt her just lets us know that mama cares maybe a little bit too much, in a good way, So the race is on to save Paige, right? And we also get a moment between Piper and Phoebe where Piper is just in Prue's room, kind of trying to process everything. And Phoebe finally hits her breaking moment, you know. And now this scene, okay, I will admit that in the past, I have torn this scene up because it is funny to me that Phoebe was crying over a pissy jacket. I will fully admit that. I will fully admit it that it has been something that has been a point of tickling me, right? But I think that going back, rewatching the scene, even though it may seem like Phoebe is not fully opening up and she's not fully embracing this hurt and this pain and she's just kind of like being nonchalant, I think I think that this scene makes perfect sense for Phoebe. You know, she's having this moment where she finally is breaking down and then she instantly comes out of it. She instantly is like, okay, what we gonna do about the source now? You know, and again, I think it's because Phoebe throws herself into other stuff. She came in and, you know, she's trying to figure out how to how to do all of this, how to really be there for Piper, how to be a sister for her in this moment because this is the first like loss between the three of them. It's always been, you know, someone externally. They have to deal with this themselves now. And so Phoebe is trying to be that source of strength for Piper. And I just think that seeing her immediately go to the source makes sense because Phoebe runs away from things. Phoebe tries to give herself something else to focus on, and she's not going to allow herself to cry too much. And we've seen it time and time again from her, and we see it so many times over the course of the series. I mean, even the way that she talked about Patty, you know, she was mad at Patty, and she immediately closes a photo album, you know, when they start talking about Patty dying. And I think it, like I said, goes to show that Phoebe does not know how to deal with things. But again, that's one of those things that I just really wanted to stop and take a moment to talk about because it just, to me, it's so impactful for the character of Phoebe. And I think that it's going to set the tone for season 4 for her. Not really knowing what to do, not really knowing what to feel, and that being taken advantage of. But anyway, so the episode concludes, okay, with the source attacking the inspector. I cannot remember that man's name to save my life. And he attacks him, almost kills him. Leo saves him. And by the way, speaking of Leo, we do have an interview with Brian Krause available. Yes, we did have the chance to speak to Brian Krause earlier this year. So I'm going to link that also down in the comments, or not in the comments, in the description. So if you want to go ahead and just go, you know, check that out, please feel free to. So the sisters are able to save Paige from the source, and he gives them what is iconic in this household. I've broken the charm circle before, and I'll do it again. I said, I know that's right. I know that's right. You better do it again. But anyway, the inspector decides that after being healed, that what the sisters do there is good. Is good. And so he decides to drop the investigation. I don't know whether he decided to drop the investigation, whether he decided to just, whether he decided to cover for them. I'm not 100% sure what was going on, okay? Because I'm like, sir, 2 people were murdered. You can't just be like, y'all do really good work here. And so I got y'all. That's not how that works. There is a legal system involved. But you know what? I said, you know what? That is not the strangest thing that is happening in this episode. But I almost wish that they had kept it and let that been like a plot point in season 4 or something like that. Just to inject a little bit of realism. Like just the same way that Paige came in and was like, I don't know what y'all got going on. I almost wish that was something that they had to keep battling because, you know, you can't just not have any consequences. But you know what? Again, let me let it go because this is not the strangest thing that happens in this episode or in this show. So you know what? It is what it is. Anyway, child, that was a little beat for Beatty. I'm telling you, when I tell you that I had every intention of just giving y'all a synopsis, but then I started talking and I was like, how can you not go through Charmed again? You know what I mean? Like, how can you not discuss the events of this episode. And I'm sure I forgot something. I'm sure somebody will be like, you forgot to talk about this. And I probably did. But how can you not talk about these episodes? How can you not go into them? They are just two of the single most important episodes of this series. And it's hard to not want to discuss them in depth to some extent because Paige's introduction, like I said, is it's a little heavy. It's a little heavy. It's a little heavy-handed. It's but I think as a whole, it was well done. I think that as a whole, they did the best that they could with what they had. They tried to go into their lore and connect that to the current times. Like, I genuinely think that they did the best that they could. The characterizations this episode to me were good for the sisters. Paige kind of not knowing what's going on, but then also making the decision to stay in their lives, and us knowing that she grew up as an only child, grew up adopted, the fact that she is now finding this biological family that she thought she might have been related to. You get Piper really not knowing how to handle anything. She's just angry. I think this is the beginning of angry Piper that we get for a while. This is the beginning of Piper's storyline, thinking that she has to step into Prue's role because that's what they've always known. They've always had a big sister. They've always had a hierarchy in their family. And now Piper thinks that she needs to step into that role and be just like Prue. And we kind of see her going on a journey of trying to figure out who she is now, trying to figure out how to protect her family, trying to figure out who she is as a witch, what this means for them. And I think this is the perfect setup. I mean, even the way that she reads Phoebe when they're in the kitchen and she says, do you have a death wish or are you just stupid? Because she genuinely cannot handle losing Phoebe right now. And she is seeing how their destiny always is going to lead to death in some way. Like, that is how she sees it. She thinks back to their mother dying. She's thinking she's literally watching the fallout of Prue dying, and she does not want to add Phoebe to that list. And like, it's really sad. And I kind of feel like they don't talk about enough how frightening it must be to think that you're gonna die. Because I mean, we do see old witches in this show, right? We see old witches. Graham's was old, so it can happen. But I can just imagine it must be frightening to be a witch who's having to fight demons or even know about demons and know that your life could just end at any moment. So that's a lot. And I honestly kind of see why they didn't go into it. I don't think there's a huge need for us to, but you get Phoebe doing what Phoebe does. She runs. She's trying to throw herself into saving Paige. She is really trying to make sure that Paige is good. And I think Phoebe, we also see her trying to be a big sister. And even though Paige isn't a child, she's an adult, I think we can see the building blocks of Phoebe trying to be that big sister and, fall into that role. She's kind of treating Paige the same way that she was with Aviva. It's very interesting. Now, listen, Cole and Leo don't really have a lot to do this episode. And I understand why. At first, I was like, why are they not more involved in this? But then I realized it's not about them. It's about the sisters. It's about the charmed ones. It's about them being reconstituted, the source coming after them. So I understand there's not a whole lot for Leo or Cole to do. Now, at one point, Cole is used as bait, and the source stabs Cole with a sword. A sword. And he just leaves Cole out there to die so that they'll go after him. It's very, that's it of the episode. Like, that was probably the biggest thing Cole had to do. And Leo, God bless him, I don't remember Leo doing anything of significance. But anyway, like I said, they're not the focal point, so it makes sense. It was also nice to get that little, moment from Patty and Grams and getting a chance to see them, get a little pop-in visit. I love when they come. And I'm sorry, but I love that whole speech. I love them, the way that they revealed Paige's thing. And then when Patty, now I would have slapped Patty when Patty was like, get mad about it, cry about it, but don't run from it. Patty, you just came up in here. And that's why I understood Piper when she was like, you cannot float in here after all these years. Like, I understood fully where Piper was coming from because, girl, don't play in my face like that. You better, don't tell me that I need to accept this. Girl, bye. Now, I do want to say also that it was very cool to start seeing the source. Like, the fact that the source, I think it goes to show how important this is, that the source is just showing up now. Like, before, he was very much in the background. Before, he was very much like someone we knew about, but we had never seen him. And now the source is here. Now he is coming up in the house. We're starting to see his face, hear his voice. We also see him working with the Oracle. So that means that he has someone in his corner that can see into the future or something of the sort anyway. Because the seer is the one later on in the season that's really his clairvoyant, but we don't get into her till later on. But I think it goes to show how important psychic ability, being able to see into the future, being able to manipulate time and events and things like that, how important it is. Because you have to remember at the end of season 3, he used Tempest's power. So he has a very deep understanding of how magic can affect an outcome. So I think the source is a lot smarter than we give him credit for. And he really is much more of a menacing villain than they made him out to be. So I was beyond excited to be like, okay, baby, the story is ramping up now. Because the source isn't just sending little goons after them. He is directly coming after them. So baby, things are bad. Things are bad. But this episode, this set of episodes is just, I mean, I love it. I love watching it. I love the drama of it. I love the source. I love vanquishing Shax. I love Paige coming in and just not knowing what to feel, who to trust. Piper and Phoebe, this is like a normal kind of like day for them magically anyway, but I think even they are starting to see, okay, things are finna get bad, especially with them. Paige is a new witch. Paige has no idea how to control her powers. She has no idea what the full extent of her powers even are. So it makes a lot of sense that everyone is kind of frantic right now. And then we also have Piper still not being able to control her exploding power because this power is still very, very new to her. So we have that happening kind of like in the background. That's not really a plot point in this set of episodes, but it's still there. Piper has no idea how to control her new power. Paige has these new powers that she can't control. There's just a lot happening and a lot of chaos happening. And this episode sets the groundwork for a lot of really powerful themes in season 4. And the biggest one, I think, is being able to accept change, being able to accept that some things are just going to be completely out of your control and you're just going to have to deal with them. And even though I hate the fact that Piper and Phoebe are told, don't run from it because it just is what it is. Your destiny still awaits. I kind of hate that because it feels very unfair, but it also feels realistic. It being unfair is very realistic because when you're dealing with grief and you're dealing with loss, it is unfair. It really is. It's unfair that you have to even deal with this in the first place. It's unfair that that person is gone, and it's unfair that you have to figure out how to live your life without them. So from that perspective, I think that's what I choose to take away from this is they shouldn't be in the situation in the first place because Prue should still be here. That's how it feels. Prue should still be here. Prue should still be in their lives. They shouldn't have to accept another sister, but they do. And I think that is what season 4 teaches us is even when things are unfair, you have to find a way to move on. You have to find a way to live in the present. And I think that that's why when Piper tries to summon Prue, Grams comes down and tells her that if you see her right now, you won't be able to move on because Piper won't. And honest to God, I think even if Piper had seen her 10 years later, it still would have been the same. But if Piper had continued down that path, let me say that. If Piper had continued down the path of feeling like she needed Prue to exist. But again, I also think that that's something that Graham set up. Because something I kind of want to talk about with this episode too is the notion of people saying that Piper needed Prue to die for her to be able to grow as a person. I don't think that that's true, me personally. Now, I'm not telling you how to feel. I am telling you that for me, Piper as a person is someone who was raised to believe that Prue was her all. Like Prue was the one that took care of her, the one that took the lead, the one that made sure that they had what they needed. And I think it's so dismissive of her to say that she needed Prue to die, because we had seen Piper start to take charge of her own life. We had seen Piper disagree with Prue. We had seen Piper start to lean on herself, on Leo. She was getting to a point where she believed in herself for the most part anyway. Like Mama became a business owner. That's not something that you can just do with, oh well, Prue said I can run it. No, she was starting to really believe in herself and see herself as worthy and capable. And yes, she still had slip ups, but she still has slip ups in season 6. So that's not something that I think is a part of her character needing Prue to die. I think it might have sped up her believing in herself and her being able to stand on her own 2 feet, but I don't think that she needed it to happen because we were watching it unfold. Speaking of season 6, we are doing a rewatch of season 6 over on the Patreon, patreon.com/powerofg. So if you want to be a part of that, maybe, head on over there right now. For Christmas, because this is going to be coming out in December. For Christmas, we are going to be running a special on, your first month with the Patreon. I'm not quite sure yet. I'm not quite sure yet how much. Probably about 50%, because we did 75% off for Black Friday. So I'm thinking probably about 50. Had to do a little self promo there. I do also think that another thing that this set of episodes gets into, but doesn't really get into, but kind of gets into, is that notion of being connected. That notion that you can sense when you're a part of something, especially for someone like Paige, who has spent her entire life feeling like she was missing a part of herself. And I think that it's really, really sweet that we get a chance to see her find that part of herself, even if that part, could lead to her young demise. But anyway, as a whole, I definitely think that this set of episodes, I keep saying this set of episodes was well done enough. I think that it did what it needed to do. I think that we got from it what we needed to get from it. And I am very, very happy with the way that these episodes, still stack up. Because some episodes of Charmed, let's just be honest. You go back and you watch them and you're like, baby, what is this? What is this slop? What am I watching? But with this set of episodes, I think it holds up in the story, but they also hold up as episodes. Like, they're ones that age well enough that when you go back and watch them, you're like, oh, this is some good drama. The drama doesn't feel like it dissipates over time. It feels like it just kind of gets more and more dramatic as you get older, because you start to kind of relate, unfortunately, to Piper and to Phoebe, and you start to see yourself more in these characters as you get older and deal with grief and loss yourself. Now, I will say that this episode is really weird in the way that it shows Phoebe's outfit, because Phoebe's outfit in part 2 is very not Phoebe. It really looks like she went in like Piper's closet. Not even Prue's. It looks like she went in Piper's closet and borrowed something, because I'm like, girl, it kind of low key looks like Graham's, because I was like, girl, whose shawl is this? It's not a shawl. It's like an overcoat. I don't know what to call it. But I'm like, girl, what is this? What are you wearing, mama? What's going on? But anyway, my personal theory on that is that they were trying to make Phoebe look older. They were trying to make, Phoebe look like she could have a little sister. And I'm like, y'all didn't need to do all of that. I'm sorry. You could have just had Phoebe and Paige kind of dressed similarly, honestly. And even Paige's outfits were questionable, because girl, what was that mess she wore when she went to the church? I didn't care for it. I know some people do. I know some people thought it was great. I am not one of those people. For me, when I look at that, I'm like, oh, we just threw anything on. We said, listen, I'm going to work to be comfortable, not to look cute. Anyway, child. Anyway, that was our discussion of Charmed Again. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I almost feel like I could have broken this up into two parts. I really do. But I also think that I got out what I needed to get out. I think that we talked about a lot of the things that we needed to discuss. The source, Paige's introduction, Piper's grief. I really do think that we hit the beats in this episode. If you'd like to hear more, maybe you can let me know. But for me, I think that we talked about everything, that we needed to discuss. Although I probably could go a little bit more into like the source's role in this episode. So if you'd like to hear that, let me know. But that is going to do it for me this week. I hope that you enjoyed the episode. Please let me know if you did in the comments if you're watching it on YouTube, or you can get at me anywhere on social media at They Call Me Mr. G. You can find me on Instagram also at Power of G Entertainment. And just let me know. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Find me in some comment sections, child. And you can also head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/powerofg, so that you can get in on all the action. You can be a part of our rewatches. You can go back and watch our past rewatches. We're also watching Buffy. And you can see our interviews with Brian Krause. You can see our interviews with Michael Bailey Smith. It just, there's so much over there on the Patreon. And our patrons get early access to videos as well. So something to keep in mind. So with that, y'all, I am going to go ahead and sign on off. I hope that y'all had a great time. And I will be hollering at you next go round where we're going to discuss, I want to say it's Power Outage, but it might be a different one. If it's not Power Outage, just pretend like I said whatever episode it actually is. All right, y'all. So I will see you later. Y'all be good. Have a great day, morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.